I remember my father had a deep, unwavering loyalty to a specific brand of motor oil. He worked in a manufacturing plant in Columbus, Ohio for over 30 years, and he understood machinery the way some men understand poetry. He bought his oil in heavy metal cans, the kind you had to puncture with a special spout, and he used it in every vehicle he ever owned. When he bought a slightly newer truck in the late 70s, the mechanic at the dealership told him that the tighter clearances in the new engine required a lighter, modern synthetic oil. My father just shook his head. He said what was good enough for his old vehicles was good enough for the new one. He believed in consistency. He believed in the old rules. 2 years later, that new engine seized up entirely on the interstate because the thick, heavy oil could not circulate fast enough to protect the internal parts. He lost the truck because he refused to believe that a changing machine required a changing maintenance routine. I think about my father and that truck quite a bit these days, especially when I look back at the way I treated my own body for most of my adult life. For decades, I held on to a set of rules about health that I learned in the 1960s and 70s. They were comfortable rules. They were the things our mothers taught us, the things we saw on television, the habits that felt like absolute truth. Chief among them was the belief that a large glass of fruit juice was the ultimate foundation of a healthy morning. Every morning for perhaps 40 years, I started my day with a tall, cold glass of orange juice. When Margaret and I were first married, she used to buy those cardboard cylinders of frozen concentrate. We would thaw them out, mix them with water in a plastic pitcher, and serve them with breakfast. We genuinely believed we were doing the right thing. We were getting our vitamins. We were starting the engine with premium fuel. Even after Margaret passed away in 2019, and I was living alone here in Scottsdale, Arizona, I kept up the habit. I upgraded to the expensive store-bought juice that claimed to be fresh squeezed, but the ritual was the exact same. I would pour a massive glass, drink it down, and feel a sense of accomplishment before the sun was even fully up. I thought I was protecting my health. I thought I was doing the work. But the body is a quiet accountant. It keeps a ledger of everything you do, and eventually the bill comes due. The first sign that something was wrong did not feel like a medical emergency. It felt like the weather. Living in Arizona, you get used to being thirsty. You get used to the dry heat pulling the moisture out of your skin. But this was different. This was a deep, unquenchable thirst that seemed to sit in the back of my throat no matter how much water I drank. I would wake up in the middle of the night feeling like I had been walking through the desert. Along with the thirst came a heaviness. It was not the kind of tiredness you feel after a long day of working in the yard. It was a dense, suffocating brain fog that would roll in around 10 in the morning, just a few hours after my healthy breakfast. I would sit in my armchair, trying to read the newspaper, and find myself reading the same paragraph 3 or 4 times. My vision would blur slightly at the edges. I felt like I was driving a car with the emergency brake pulled halfway up. The engine was running, but the resistance was dragging everything down. I told myself a comfortable lie. I told myself that this was simply what it meant to be approaching 80 years old. I told myself that the machinery was just winding down, that the heavy feeling was the inevitable gravity of aging. I ignored the warning lights on the dashboard because accepting them meant I would have to take the truck into the shop, and I did not want to know what was wrong. The truth caught up with me during a routine physical. The doctor ran his standard panel of blood tests, the ones they always do to check the oil in the filters. When the results came back, he walked into the room holding a piece of paper and looking entirely unimpressed. He told me my blood pressure was elevated, but more importantly, my blood sugar was climbing. He pointed to a number on the page, my A1C, which measures your average blood sugar over a 3-month period. He told me I was standing firmly in the pre-diabetic range, and if I did not change course, I was going to cross the line into full type 2 diabetes within the year. I sat on the edge of the examination table, listening to the paper crinkle underneath me, and I felt a surge of defensive anger. I told him there must be a mistake. I explained that I was not a man who ate cake or cookies. I told him I did not drink soda. I told him I ate oatmeal and drank a large glass of pure, healthy orange juice every single morning. I told him I was doing everything right. He looked at me over the top of his glasses and sighed. He said that drinking a large glass of fruit juice without the actual fiber of the fruit was biologically no different than drinking a glass of liquid candy. He told me to cut it out. He gave me a pamphlet that looked like it had been photocopied 100 times and sent me home. I drove back to my house feeling betrayed by my own habits, betrayed by the decades of marketing I had believed, and betrayed by my own body for changing the rules on me. I put the doctor's pamphlet on the kitchen counter and stared at the pitcher of juice in my refrigerator. A few days later, my daughter Laura came over. Laura is a registered nurse up in Phoenix, and she has spent her entire career dealing with the consequences of people ignoring their health until it is too late. She saw the pamphlet on the counter. She did not lecture me. She poured herself a cup of coffee, sat down at the kitchen table, and asked me what the doctor had actually said. I told her the numbers. I told her about the A1C, the prediabetes warning, and the doctor telling me that my morning juice was liquid candy. I told her I thought the doctor was exaggerating. Laura shook her head. She leaned forward and explained it to me in a way the doctor had not. She told me to imagine the sugar in that juice, specifically the fructose, as a massive shipment of heavy cargo arriving at a small manufacturing plant. In a whole piece of fruit, like an actual orange, that cargo is packed tightly in complex wooden crates. The crates are the fiber. When you eat the whole fruit, your digestive system has to spend time breaking down the crates, prying off the boards, unpacking the cargo slowly. The sugar enters your bloodstream at a steady, manageable pace. The factory can handle the inventory. But when you extract the juice and throw away the pulp and the fiber, you are stripping away the crates. You're taking a massive dump truck full of raw cargo and dropping it directly onto the factory floor all at once. Laura explained that your liver is the factory. When that massive wave of liquid sugar hits the liver without any fiber to slow it down, the liver panics. It cannot process the inventory fast enough. So it does the only thing it can do to clear the floor. It converts that excess sugar directly into fat. It packs it into the cells around the liver itself. Over time, this creates a condition called fatty liver, which acts like a thick layer of grime over your metabolic engine. Because the liver is gummed up, the entire system becomes resistant to insulin. The insulin is trying to unlock the doors to let the energy into your muscles, but the locks are jammed. So the sugar backs up into the bloodstream. The pancreas sees the high sugar and pumps out even more insulin, desperately trying to force the doors open. Your body becomes a flooded engine, drowning in its own fuel, rusting from the inside out. That was the thirst I was feeling. That was the brain fog. My blood was thick with sugar that could not get into the cells where it belonged, and my brain was starving for the energy that was trapped in the pipes. The juice I thought was giving me life was actually the rust that was taking away my independence. I had been living a comfortable lie. I had been using the oil my father used, refusing to admit that the engine of an 80-year-old man requires a different kind of maintenance. I stopped the juice the next morning. I switched to black coffee and water, but I knew that just stopping the bad habit was not enough. The rust was already in the pipes. I needed a way to clean the system. I needed a way to help my body manage the carbohydrates that I was still eating in my normal meals, the rice, the potatoes, the bread that makes up a regular human diet. I started looking for answers. I spent hours reading, trying to find practical mechanical solutions that made sense. And that is when I came across something on the internet that almost made me close the computer entirely. It was a headline. It read exactly like this. At 81, I have a single drink that flushes 95% of excess sugar. Doctors cannot explain it. I laughed out loud in my empty kitchen. I spent my life in community health education trying to help people understand basic medical facts. If there is one thing I know, it is that there are no miracles, and if a doctor cannot explain it, you probably should not be swallowing it. Headlines like that are designed to prey on desperate people. They promise a magic flush, a silver bullet that requires no discipline and no change in behavior. I almost ignored it completely. But the core ingredient mentioned in that ridiculous article caught my attention. It was not a rare root from the Amazon. It was not a $100 supplement in a shiny bottle. It was something I already had sitting in the back of my pantry. Apple cider vinegar. I called my son Daniel in Denver. Daniel is a physical therapist. He understands the mechanics of the human body better than anyone I know, and more importantly, he has a low tolerance for nonsense. I read him the headline over the phone. Daniel groaned. He told me the headline was garbage marketing. He told me there is no magic drink that flushes 95% of sugar out of your body. If there were, diabetes would not exist. But then he stopped. He said that if you strip away the exaggeration, if you ignore the miracle promises, there is actually a very real, very well documented biological mechanism behind vinegar. It does not flush sugar out of your system. That is a lie. What it does is act as a mechanical brake on the way sugar enters your system in the first place. Daniel told me to think about a dam holding back a river. When you eat a plate of food, your stomach acts like the reservoir behind the dam. Normally, your stomach processes the food and then opens the floodgates, releasing the broken down starches and sugars into your small intestine, where they are rapidly absorbed into your bloodstream. If you eat a heavy meal, the floodgates open wide and you get a massive surge of glucose in the pipes. The pancreas panics, the insulin spikes, and the cycle of inflammation begins. The active component in apple cider vinegar is something called acetic acid. Daniel explained that when you introduce acetic acid into the stomach just before a meal, it does two incredibly important things. First, it slows down the rate of gastric emptying. It acts like a governor on an engine. It forces the stomach to keep the floodgates partially closed. Instead of releasing the food into the intestines all at once in a massive wave, the stomach releases it slowly in a steady, manageable trickle. The sugar still enters your system, but it drips in over hours instead of flooding in over minutes. Your pancreas never panics. The insulin response stays low and steady. The pipes never get overwhelmed. Second, Daniel explained that acetic acid acts as an enzyme inhibitor. In your saliva and your digestive tract, you have enzymes whose only job is to break down complex carbohydrates into simple sugars as fast as possible. The acetic acid binds to some of those enzymes and temporarily disables them. It throws a wrench into the disassembly line. Because the enzymes cannot work at full capacity, a portion of the starches you eat passes through your upper digestive tract without being broken down into sugar at all. They move into the lower bowel where they feed the good bacteria rather than spiking your blood sugar. It was not a miracle. It was not a magic flush. It was pure simple mechanics. It was a chemical restrictor plate that slowed the engine down to a safe operating speed. I asked Daniel how to use it. I wanted to know the exact specifications. He gave me the instructions and he gave me the warnings. He said that acetic acid is a powerful tool, but like any tool, it can cause damage if you use it wrong. You do not ever drink it straight from the bottle. If you do that, you will burn the tissue in your esophagus and strip the enamel completely off your teeth. You have to dilute it. The protocol he gave me was simple. 1 tablespoon of raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar mixed into a tall glass of water. You drink it approximately 20 minutes before your largest meal of the day. I started the next day before lunch. I poured the tablespoon of vinegar into the water. It clouded up slightly. I took a sip and my eyes watered. It did not taste like the sweet orange juice I was used to. It tasted harsh. It tasted acidic. It reminded me of the smell of my mother canning pickles in the kitchen back in Ohio when I was a boy. It did not taste like a treat. It tasted like work. It tasted like medicine. But I remembered what the comfortable lies had cost me. I remembered the brain fog, the thirst, the crinkling paper on the examination table. I decided right then that I would rather drink something that tasted like discipline than suffer the consequences of something that tasted like candy. I drank the whole glass. Daniel had given me one more crucial piece of advice to protect my teeth. He told me to always drink it through a straw so the acid bypasses the front of the teeth entirely, and to rinse my mouth out with plain water immediately afterward. Never brush your teeth right after drinking it, he warned, because the acid temporarily softens the enamel and the brush will scrub it away. I followed the instructions like a man following a maintenance manual for an airplane. 1 tablespoon in water 20 minutes before my heaviest meal. Use a straw. Rinse afterward. I did not feel a sudden jolt of energy. There was no miraculous transformation. After 60, the things that actually work rarely happen overnight. They happen in the quiet spaces between the days. But after the first week, I noticed something subtle. The afternoon brain fog, the heavy, dragging sensation that used to hit me after lunch, was not as severe. I did not feel the urgent need to sit in my armchair and close my eyes. I felt a steady, even level of energy. After a month, the deep, unquenchable thirst in the middle of the night disappeared. I was sleeping through until morning without needing to keep a glass of water on the nightstand. When I went back to the doctor for my follow-up blood work 6 months later, I did not argue with him. I just waited for him to read the paper. He came into the room, looked at the chart, and looked at me. My A1C had dropped significantly. I was pulling back from the edge of the pre-diabetic cliff. My blood sugar was stabilizing. The doctor asked me what I had changed. I told him I stopped the liquid candy in the morning. I did not tell him about the vinegar. The medical industry often struggles to validate things that cannot be prescribed in a pill bottle, and I did not need his validation. I had the results in my own body. There is a detail about this habit, a layer of understanding that most people miss when they read those ridiculous internet headlines. The vinegar does not give you permission to eat garbage. Some people think they can drink a glass of acetic acid and then eat an entire pizza and a bowl of ice cream without consequence. That is another comfortable lie. The vinegar is a brake pedal, but if you slam your foot on the accelerator hard enough, the brakes will eventually fail. The tool only works if you use it in conjunction with common sense. You still have to eat real food. You still have to manage your portions. The drink is an assist, not a free pass. I think about the decades I spent drinking that orange juice, thinking I was building a strong foundation. I think about my father holding onto his old motor oil until his engine seized. We get so attached to our habits. We let our routines become our identity. We find a comfortable lie, and we wrap it around ourselves like a blanket, because the truth requires us to change, and change is exhausting. But the body does not care about your nostalgia. The body only responds to the physical reality of what you put into it today. When you reach your 70s and 80s, the margin for error gets remarkably thin. You can no longer outwork a bad diet. You can no longer rely on the sheer resilience of youth to bounce back from the damage you inflict on your own system. You have to become a better mechanic. You have to understand the plumbing. You have to be willing to look at a habit you have loved for 40 years and admit that it is destroying you. Using a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in water before a meal is a small mechanical adjustment. It is a way of opening the release valve slightly so the pressure does not blow the pipes. It slows the sugar, it calms the pancreas, it lowers the insulin response, it reduces the chronic inflammation that serves as the root cause of almost every major disease that takes our independence away. My wife Margaret loved her sweet iced tea. Especially in the summer months when the Arizona heat was oppressive, she would make a large pitcher of it and keep it in the refrigerator. We would sit on the back patio in the evenings, drinking our tea, watching the sun go down over the desert. We thought we were just enjoying our retirement, so we did not know we were flooding our systems with the exact fuel that rusts the machinery. I cannot go back and change what we drank on that patio, but I can control what I put in my glass today. I still sit on the patio in the evenings. The heat is still the same, but the drink in my hand has changed. It is not sweet. It does not taste like a memory. It tastes bitter, sharp, and entirely functional. It tastes like a man who intends to stay on his feet for a few more years. The independence you want to keep is protected in the small habits you build. It is not secured by major surgeries or complicated medical procedures. It is secured in the kitchen 20 minutes before a meal. It is secured by having the humility to throw away a comfortable lie and pick up a practical truth. You do not need a miracle. You do not need a secret that doctors cannot explain. You just need to understand the machine you live in, and you need to give it the right maintenance. This I learned too late for me in some respects, but you still have time. Look at the habits you think are protecting you. Ask yourself if they are actually serving the body you have right now, today. Don't wait to feel the rust before you change the oil. Take control of the plumbing, dilute the acid, protect your foundation. What you ignore today can limit you tomorrow. What you adjust today will keep you walking through your own front door for years to come. Do the work. I'll see you next time.